Hi, I'm Emily from Shenandoah Wellness, and today I am making this video to answer a question that one of my subscribers had, which was basically asking why make sourdough starter. What is the sourdough starter and why should we do it? So first of all, what? A sourdough starter is made primarily from flour and water, but what makes it a starter is it depends on natural wild yeasts. And it's the yeast that gives it the power to leaven or rise, make bread rise. So several different ways you can obtain sourdough starters. One way is you can make your own just by, if you do make your own, it's recommended that you use whole grain flour. That could be rye flour, wheat flour, spelt flour. Freshly ground is best. On the grains of themselves, the grains of either the wheat, spelt, or rye are naturally occurring yeast. So when you grind it up and you mix it with water, you're kind of giving it a medium where those yeasts can flourish. They can eat the sugars in the flour and create a bubbly fermented solution. We also have wild yeast in the air, so you can also, if you start your own starter, it's kind of neat. Your starter is very unique to you. You're going to have slightly different profiles of yeast than another baker who starts their own. Then a second, maybe more common way is to purchase a sourdough starter. A lot of times it's just a dried starter and you mix it with flour and water, which kind of wakes up the yeast. And if you know anyone who bakes sourdough bread, you can also ask for a starter from them. You would just need a few spoonfuls of their starter. So the why. When it comes down to making yeast breads, you have two options. You have commercial yeast, which is the dried little tiny granules of yeast that you can buy in packets at the grocery store, or you can do a sourdough starter. There are benefits to both. With the active commercial yeast that you buy, it's going to be a much faster fermentation. You don't have to wait overnight. Within a couple hours, you can have bread that's ready to bake. But because it rises so much quicker, the fermentation process happens so much quicker. It's actually more similar to an alcoholic fermentation instead of an acidic fermentation, which is what the fermentation that you get from a sourdough starter. It's going to be a slower acidic fermentation. And the benefit of the acidic fermentation is that it's going to help break down some of the proteins and enzymes that are in the flour. And especially in today's world with so many people who have either allergies or intolerances and sensitivities to different proteins in general, and so we're talking about gluten primarily when it comes to grain, the sourdough starter is going to help break those down, break down the enzyme inhibitors that often irritate our gut lining. So with the commercial yeast, you're going to get a quicker rise. You can make bread, in just a couple of hours time, but you aren't going to have the proteins in the bread kind of broken down and made into easier to digest or assimilate form. Another difference is yeast breads, the commercial yeast, they aren't going to have quite the same flavor that a sourdough bread has. And once again, with sourdough starters, you can have a wide range of flavors. They can become very sour, less sour, but they're going to have a little more flavor and also substance. The sourdough bread is going to be a little more chewier. And then a third difference between the commercial yeast and a sourdough bread made from a sourdough starter is that it's going to actually last longer. It's going to have a longer shelf life. And now, when I refer to a commercial yeast bread, I'm not referring to what you buy at the store that has a bunch of ingredients, several of them preservatives, so it lasts at room temperature for an insanely long time. But no, I'm comparing if you make a loaf of homemade yeast bread with commercial yeast versus a homemade loaf of sourdough bread. The sourdough bread is going to stay fresher and not become moldy. And so primarily what it boils down to is the taste that you prefer, the time schedule. Even though sourdough isn't as quick as a commercial yeast, it does take, over 24 hours usually from starting to having a finished product. And even though that time period, it's not like you're busy the entire time, it's broken down into different steps. But until you find a rhythm where you work that into your life, it can be kind of intimidating for some people. But to me, I think that the health benefits are probably the most important thing for me, just because grains are seeds, and with grains and seeds, when they're produced in the plant, they're full of enzyme inhibitors, and we really, until they're broken down, they can be kind of harsh on our digestive system, and it also is hard to get the nutrition from them while those enzyme inhibitors are still in place. So the sourdough just provides a really nice, long, acidic ferment that can help start breaking down those grains for us. So thanks a lot for that question. And if any of you have any topics you'd like me to discuss, just leave it in the comments below. Thank you.